Many people are unsure exactly what board members should and should not do, what exactly their role is, and for that matter, why in the world do we need to have a board of directors? In this training, you will learn the key roles and responsibilities of board members, both as the board and as individuals. While discussing each role, we will also share some examples of how the role functions in real life. Let's get started. The following information provides the legal foundations of boards for nonprofit organizations. Additionally, it is important to remember that nonprofits are also usually built on fundamental values such as honesty, integrity, compassion, trust, and transparency. The number one responsibility of board members is to be the keeper of the public's trust. This means it's the job of board members to ensure that all resources are used to carry out the mission of the organization to serve the targeted community. Since all nonprofits are in a position where they are using taxpayer resources through the discounts they receive, and the fact that they do not pay taxes on the income they receive, the general public has a right to know the organization is functioning and serving well. The legal role of board members is one of governance. Within the governance role, the board has several responsibilities. The first is ensuring the mission of the organization is being kept, that mission drift is not occurring. The board also has a fiduciary responsibility. Simply put, this means that each board member is acting in the best interest of the nonprofit organization. All decisions should be made in a way that best serves the organization and those it serves. There are three primary duties which outline the behavior board members should have to fulfill this fiduciary responsibility. Duty of care. This is the level of competence that a board member should have when making decisions on behalf of the organization. The best test to determine if this duty is being fulfilled is asking if a prudent person would make the same decision if given the information presented to the board and if they were in the same position. Thus, each board member has the responsibility to exercise reasonable care when making a decision for the organization. Duty of loyalty. This duty is one of faithfulness. It is expected that a board member will give undivided allegiance when he or she is making decisions on behalf of the organization. In other words, the board member will ensure that they are not making decisions that are in their personal or business's best interest. It is also important to note that through the duty of loyalty, the board member has a responsibility not to use information obtained as a board member for personal gain, but instead for the best interests of the organization. Duty of obedience. The duty of obedience is one that requires board members to be faithful to the mission of the organization and ensure that all local, state, and federal governing laws are followed. For instance, it is the board's responsibility to ensure that the 990 has been filed as well as any state reports. While these three duties are the legal duties of the board of directors, there are also some other roles that are really best practices for healthy organizations. The first is setting organizational direction. It is the board's job to define the mission of the organization and what it is working to accomplish. The board is also responsible for setting the strategic direction of the organization. In other words, looking at the work of the organization, the trends in the community, and where the organization needs to be in the next 1 to 3 years to continue to serve. Note here, tactical planning, the plan that details the steps or process to get to the desired goal at the end of the 1 to 3 years, is the responsibility of the staff, not the board. Next, it is the job of the board of directors to ensure the organization has the necessary resources to fulfill its mission. There are three primary sources of resources. Leadership. It is the job of the board to make sure there is competent leadership, i.e., the executive director. Then the board needs to support and evaluate the leadership on a regular basis. Note, the board only has one employee, and that's the executive director. All other staff of the organization report to the executive director. Financial resources. The board is responsible for ensuring the organization has adequate resources to remain financially viable. The board can fulfill this responsibility in several ways. First, board members can and should contribute financially. They can also solicit other individuals for contributions to the organization. Board members can also support the efforts of the executive director as he or she solicits gifts on behalf of the organization. And finally, board members can help develop a fundraising plan. Fundraising plans are a great way to get board members involved. They can develop a fundraising activity and take full responsibility for its implementation, whether that's a luncheon, a golf tournament, or a picnic at their house. Finally, the board is also responsible for ensuring the organization has a positive public image. While we often don't think of public image as a resource, it is wise to do so and recognize that it's a resource that once damaged is very hard to rebuild. An accurate and positive reputation in the local community can impact whether or not the organization will have the other resources. Board members can share the story of the organization and its successes with other community stakeholders to help build that positive public image. Expectations for board members. While expectations of all board members should be communicated during the recruitment and orientation processes, it is always helpful to provide reminders of the expectations of each board member as an individual. First, board members should be expected to have regular attendance at board meetings, and they should take the time to prepare for those meetings in advance. Board members should be invested and committed to the mission and vision of the organization. Related to the fiscal responsibilities of board members, all board members should be approving the annual organizational budget prior to the start of the fiscal year. Note, it is not uncommon for the executive director and the accountant or bookkeeper, i.e. the finance staff, to prepare the draft of the budget as they are the ones who work with the organization on a day-to-day basis. The board should also be reviewing the financial statements on a regular basis, paying particular attention to any variances between what was budgeted and what is actually being spent. Ideally, board members should review the financial statements monthly, even if the board does not meet monthly. Finally, the board should ensure that an audit firm is contracted with and conducts an annual audit. Additionally, while not required, it is always nice and helpful for board members to serve as ambassadors to the organization. As an ambassador, it is the board member's role to speak highly of the organization to others and share the good work it is doing. It is important to note, though, that being an ambassador does not mean sharing a personal opinion about what is happening at the organization. Volunteers are most always welcome at nonprofits, and board members can make some of the best volunteers. Board members should volunteer when their interests and talents align with the needs of the organization. No board member should ever be forced to volunteer, and as a volunteer, the board member should not expect any special treatment. So let's recap. Board members have three primary legal responsibilities: the duty of care, the duty of loyalty, and the duty of obedience. Additionally, the board is responsible for ensuring adequate resources exist to fulfill the mission of the organization. There are three main types of resources: leadership, financial, and public image. Above all, the board should seek to assist the organization in fulfilling its mission. For discussion with your board, what specific areas do we need to work on? What do you need to know in order to fulfill these responsibilities?